My wife slept with our neighbor while I was hospitalized after a work injury, so when I recovered, I took everything and left her world shattered. I, 42, male, have been married to Barbara, 39, female, for 8 years. She brought her son Gage, now 16, male, into our marriage. The kid was 8 when we first met, and I really tried with him, built him a treehouse, taught him to fish, the whole stepdad package. Barbara and I weren't exactly #relationship goals, but I thought we were solid. We had our routine, we had our inside jokes, we had our life. It all changed 51 days ago. I was working at a site when a support beam gave way. Long story short, I ended up with a crushed leg, 3 broken ribs, and a punctured lung. The doctors later told me I was lucky to be alive. Not feeling particularly lucky these days, to be honest. That first night in the hospital is still fuzzy. Pain meds had me floating in and out. I remember calling Barbara, telling her not to bring Gage because it looked pretty bad. She said she'd come first thing in the morning. Morning came, no Barbara. Day 2, no Barbara. I figured she was dealing with Gage, maybe work stuff. Called her that evening, she answered while watching some reality show, could hear it blaring in the background, said she'd try to make it tomorrow. Day 3, no Barbara. By day 5, I was starting to get seriously worried, not about us, about her. Like, was she in an accident? Did something happen to Gage? I asked a nurse if my wife had called. Nothing. I tried calling again, straight to voicemail. The pattern continued. 1 week became 2. The nurses started giving me these pitying looks. One of them, Tessa, 34, female, would sit with me during her breaks sometimes. She never asked why my wife wasn't visiting, but I could see the question in her eyes. 3 weeks in, I was finally moved from ICU to a regular room. By then, I'd managed to get Barbara on the phone exactly twice. Both calls lasted less than 3 minutes. She always had somewhere to be, something to do. Our dog Curtis was sick, the dishwasher was leaking, Gage had a game, always something. That night, I couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about our 8th anniversary just 2 months ago. Barbara had seemed distant, checking her phone all night. When I asked if everything was okay, she smiled and said, "Of course, why wouldn't it be?" I remember thinking it was a weird response, but I let it go. Foreshadowing much? FML. 4 weeks in, surgery number 3 on my leg, still no visit from Barbara. My sister Bernice came by almost daily, bringing actual home-cooked food and updates about Curtis. The dog was fine, by the way. One afternoon, she hesitated before leaving, then asked if I wanted her to talk to Barbara about what was going on. The look on Bernice's face said it all. My sister has never been able to hide her feelings. We grew up in a house where you said what you meant or didn't say anything at all. About the fact that she hasn't visited her husband in the hospital for 28 days, Bernice finally said. Something broke inside me, not my heart, more like the bubble of denial I'd been living in. I asked Bernice to check our joint account, call it a hunch, call it finally waking the hell up. 2 days later, Bernice brought my laptop and helped me log into our banking. What I saw made my blood pressure spike so high that a nurse came running when the monitors went crazy. $6,000 withdrawn over the past month, ATM withdrawals mostly, a few transfers to an account I didn't recognize, and a charge from a jewelry store. Barbara doesn't wear jewelry except her wedding ring and the necklace I got her last Christmas. That night, I made the call that changed everything. Barbara actually picked up for once. I didn't mention the money, just asked when she was planning to visit. "Look, the hospital's like 40 minutes away," she said. I could hear her chewing something. Dinner time. Gas is like $5 a gallon right now. And with everything else... Everything else? I repeated. A pause. Well, yeah, I'm basically a single parent right now. Gage has stuff. The house needs work. That leaky roof isn't fixing itself. I reminded her that my sister had offered to pick her up multiple times, that friends had offered to drive her, that we had more than enough money for gas, or at least we did before she started making all those withdrawals. That's when she said it, the words I'll never forget. "You're not worth the gas money, Everett. Either die fast or heal quick, but I'm sick of this in between." I must have made some sound, because she immediately started backpedaling, said she was stressed, said she didn't mean it, but I wasn't really hearing her anymore. Then Gage got on the phone. Guess he was right there the whole time. "We don't miss you," he said, his voice cracking like he was trying to sound tougher than he felt. "Mom's friend Silvio has been helping with everything." Silvio, our neighbor, the guy who moved in 6 months ago and was always offering to help Barbara with things around the house when I was working late. I hung up, didn't say another word, just pressed the red button and stared at the ceiling for what felt like hours. Morning came, day 36 in the hospital. Tessa brought me an extra pudding cup with my meds. "Rough night?" she asked, noticing my untouched breakfast. I told her everything. Not sure why. Maybe because she was the one person who'd been consistently kind without wanting anything from me. She listened without interrupting, then said something that stuck with me. Some people show you who they are during the good times. The smart ones pay attention. The rest of us have to learn during the bad times. The next 2 weeks were a blur of physical therapy, doctor visits, and secret planning. I told the hospital staff not to give Barbara any information if she called. She didn't. I had Bernice bring me documents from our home office. While Barbara was at work, I made some calls using Bernice's phone. Meanwhile, I started tracking the bank accounts daily. More withdrawals, more unexplained expenses, a charge for 2 plane tickets to Cancun. Barbara hates the beach, says the sand gets everywhere. One afternoon, Bernice came in looking nervous. Said she'd driven by our house and seen Silvio's car in the driveway at 2 in the afternoon on a Wednesday when Barbara was supposed to be at work. I didn't explode, didn't cry. Instead, I felt this strange calm settle over me, like everything finally made sense. That night, I asked Tessa what it would take for me to check myself out early. The doctors wanted me to stay another 3 weeks minimum. My leg was still in a massive brace. I could barely walk with a walker. But I needed to move before Barbara emptied our accounts completely. Tessa said, against medical advice. But Everett, you're still healing. The infection risk alone. I can't stay here, I told her. Not anymore. She helped me understand what I'd need for home care. Helped me find a medical supply company that would deliver equipment. Even gave me the number of a home health service. Day 51, I signed the AMA papers. My doctor spent 30 minutes trying to talk me out of it. Said I was risking serious complications. I told him I'd risk more by staying. Bernice picked me up in her SUV, had the back seats folded down so I could keep my leg elevated. As we pulled away from the hospital, she asked the obvious question, "Where to? Your place?" I watched the hospital disappear in the side mirror. 51 days, not one visit from my wife. "No," I said, "not home. Take me to the Staybridge on Wesley." I made a reservation, extended stay. For how long? I thought about Barbara and Gage and Silvio, about the missing money and the beach trip, about 8 years of building a life with someone who couldn't be bothered to visit me in the hospital. "As long as it takes," I said. "I've got plans to make." Bernice glanced at me, then back at the road. "You're going nuclear, aren't you?" For the first time in 51 days, I smiled. "No. I'm going to give Barbara exactly what she deserves, nothing more, nothing less." And that's how Operation Empty House began. So, where was I? Right, the Staybridge on Westlake. Not going to lie, that first night was rough. The hotel room seemed massive and empty compared to my hospital bed. No nurses checking vitals every 4 hours, no beeping machines. Just me, my thoughts, and a leg that felt like it was being stabbed repeatedly. Ended up binging some cooking competition show until 4 in the morning because the pain meds weren't cutting it. Bernice brought me breakfast the next morning, those little microwavable breakfast sandwiches and the strongest coffee known to mankind. Found her scrolling through comments on a neighborhood social media group. That's when I learned Barbara had posted about her heroic husband fighting for his life and asking for prayers during this difficult time, complete with a 5-year-old picture of us on vacation. The timestamp showed she'd posted it 3 days after my accident and never mentioned me again. The absolute gall of this woman. Bernice wanted me to call Barbara immediately, tell her I knew everything, go scorched earth on social media. Part of me wanted that too. The messy public meltdown where everyone would see what she'd done. But something Tessa said at the hospital kept echoing in my head. The best revenge isn't just planned, it's patient. So instead of rage texting, I made a list, opened the Notes app on my phone, and just started typing everything I needed to do. Find a lawyer, document assets, figure out what happened with our money, get my own bank account, find a permanent place to live, get Curtis. Priority. Bernice helped me find a lawyer who could come to the hotel since I still couldn't drive. Guy named Reggie showed up the next day in jeans and sneakers, carrying a backpack instead of a briefcase. Not what I expected, but turns out Reggie was exactly what I needed. Practical, straightforward, and apparently specialized in complicated domestic situations. First thing Reggie asked was whether I wanted divorce or just separation. Hadn't even gotten that far in my thinking, to be honest, but the answer came quicker than I expected. "Divorce," I said, "definitely divorce." We spent 3 hours going through everything. The house, bought before marriage but refinanced together. The cars, one in each name. The bank accounts, mostly joint. The retirement funds, separate. Reggie took notes on his tablet, occasionally letting out a low whistle. "So, she hasn't visited you once in the hospital?" he asked, looking up from his notes. 51 days, not once. He shook his head. And you're sure about the withdrawals, the trips, this Silvio guy? I showed him the bank statements, the credit card charges, the social media posts Bernice had screenshotted where Barbara had checked in at restaurants I'd never heard of, always with a friend who was never tagged. Here's where we stand, Reggie finally said. In this state, you're entitled to half of all marital assets, but there's a catch. You need proof of what exists before she starts hiding things. That night, I couldn't sleep again, not from pain this time, but from planning. I lay there, staring at the ceiling fan, spinning through possibilities. Barbara thought I was still in the hospital. She had no idea I knew about Silvio, the money, any of it. That gave me an advantage I couldn't waste. Day 3 at the hotel, I created a new email account and ordered a burner phone online, then texted Barbara from my regular phone, telling her the doctors were keeping me longer, reception was spotty, and I'd call when I could. She replied with a thumbs-up emoji, not even actual words, just, the next week was all about documentation. Bernice went to our house while Barbara was at work and photographed everything, every room, every drawer, every closet. She brought back all my important papers, birth certificate, social security card, passport, also snagged some clothes and my backup laptop. Meanwhile, I was busy opening new accounts at a different bank, set up direct deposit for my paychecks going forward, transferred my half of our savings, not a penny more, not a penny less, as Reggie advised, canceled our joint credit cards and got my own. Finding an apartment, while barely mobile, wasn't easy. Ended up doing virtual tours on my laptop, found a ground floor unit in a building with an elevator, 15 minutes from my old house, signed the lease digitally, and paid the deposit from my new account. 2 weeks after leaving the hospital, I was still using a walker but making progress. Barbara had called exactly twice, both times for less than a minute. Always too busy to talk, always rushing somewhere. I kept up the act, telling her I was doing physical therapy twice a day, and the doctors were pleased with my progress. That's when I found out through Bernice that Barbara was planning a girls' weekend with her friends, 3 days in Nashville, leaving Friday morning, coming back Sunday night. Perfect timing doesn't even begin to cover it. I called a moving company and scheduled them for Saturday, paid extra for packing services, made a detailed inventory of what was mine before the marriage, what we bought together, and what was exclusively hers. Reggie reviewed it all, making adjustments to keep everything legal. The waiting was the hardest part. By Thursday night, I was practically vibrating with nervous energy. What if Barbara canceled her trip? What if she came home early? What if Gage stayed behind? 1,000 what-ifs running through my head on repeat. Friday morning came. Bernice drove past our house at 7 in the morning. Barbara's car was gone, replaced by an airport shuttle van loading luggage. Operation Empty House was officially a go. Bernice picked me up from the hotel at noon on Saturday. By then, I'd progressed from a walker to crutches, still slow as hell but mobile enough. We arrived at the house just as the moving truck pulled up, 4 guys, all business. I had my keys, my inventory list, and a determination I didn't know I possessed. Walking into my house after almost 70 days away felt surreal. Everything looked the same but somehow different, like walking onto a set of a TV show about my life rather than my actual home. Photos of Barbara and me on the walls, mail piled on the kitchen counter, Gage's shoes in the entryway. Most surprising, the house was spotless, like magazine perfect clean. In 8 years of marriage, I'd never seen it this tidy. Apparently, Barbara only broke out the good housekeeping for Silvio, not her husband. Curtis came bounding down the stairs when he heard my voice, nearly knocked me over despite my crutches, 80 pounds of pure canine joy, whining and licking and wiggling like his tail might fly off. That moment, my dog remembering me after months away, almost broke me. Had to excuse myself to the bathroom for a minute to pull it together. The movers were efficient, started with the big furniture first, the bedroom set I'd bought before marriage, the living room furniture we'd picked together but split 50-50, my office setup, my tools from the garage. Barbara's stuff stayed untouched, her vanity, her closet full of clothes, her craft room supplies. Gage's room was trickier. Legally, I had no obligation to, but emotionally, that was another story. I'd helped raise him for 8 years, taught him to ride a bike, helped with science fair projects. In the end, I left everything except the gaming setup I'd bought him last Christmas. That came with me. Around 4 in the afternoon, Bernice ordered pizza for everyone. We sat on moving blankets in the half-empty living room, eating straight from the box. One of the movers asked why we were leaving some stuff behind. I just said we were separating households. He nodded, like he'd seen it all before. By 7 in the evening, the truck was loaded. I did one final walkthrough, making sure I'd taken exactly what I was entitled to, no more, no less. Found myself standing in our bedroom, staring at the wedding photo on Barbara's nightstand, decided to leave it, let her deal with that memory. The new apartment was chaos that night, boxes everywhere, furniture in random places, because I couldn't help much with arranging it. Curtis kept sniffing everything, clearly confused about where we were. Bernice stayed until almost midnight, helping unpack essentials and setting up my bed. When she finally left, the silence was deafening, just me and Curtis in a strange place, surrounded by the physical remnants of my old life. I sat on the couch, awkwardly positioned in the middle of the living room, scrolling through my phone. Barbara had posted pics from Nashville, all smiles with her friends, #girlsweekend, #bestlife. Meanwhile, her actual house was half empty. The next day was Sunday. Barbara and Gage would be coming home that evening. I kept expecting anxiety to kick in, but instead felt this weird calm, like watching a movie I already knew the ending to. Around 6 in the evening, my phone lit up with a text from Bernice, they're home, waiting for the fallout. At 6:47 in the evening, my phone exploded. First came the text from Barbara, where is all our stuff? What did you do? Are you serious right now? Then the calls started, one after another. I watched them come in but didn't answer. After the 6th call, I turned my phone off completely. An hour later, my burner phone pinged with a text from Bernice. You need to see this. She'd sent a video clip from her doorbell camera. Bernice lives across the street and 2 houses down from us, close enough to see our front door. The video showed Barbara standing on our front lawn, screaming at the house, hands wild, face contorted, the audio crystal clear. He took everything, even the goddamn dog. Who does this? Curtis looked up when he heard her voice on the video, tilted his head like he was trying to understand, then went back to chewing his bone, completely unbothered. Smart dog. Later that night, I turned my regular phone back on. 17 missed calls, 32 text messages, 4 voicemails. I listened to just one, Barbara's voice shaking. You can't just disappear with our stuff. This isn't legal. I'm calling the police. I forwarded it to Reggie, who responded within minutes, let her call. Everything we did was by the book. The next morning, I woke up to an email from Barbara. Subject line, we need to talk. The body contained just 3 lines. I know you're upset, but this is extreme. Call me. We can work this out. No apology, no acknowledgement of what she'd done. Just Barbara expecting to control the situation like always. I didn't respond. Instead, I had Reggie send her a formal letter outlining exactly what I had taken and why, along with divorce papers, legal, methodical, and completely by the book. That afternoon, while sorting through boxes in my new kitchen, I found something I'd forgotten about, the anniversary card Barbara had given me 2 months before my accident. Inside, she'd written, "To many more years of building our life together." I stared at it for a long time, this evidence of a promise already broken when it was made. Then I took a photo, texted it to Barbara with a single question. Was Silvio already in the picture when you wrote this? She read it immediately, started typing, stopped, started again. Finally, it's complicated. That's when I knew I'd made the right decision. Some things aren't complicated at all. Day 3, post-move. My phone buzzed with an unknown number. Normally I'd ignore it, but something told me to answer. It was Gage. His voice sounded smaller than I remembered, like he'd somehow shrunk in the weeks since I'd seen him. He asked if he could come see me just to talk. No Barbara, no drama, just us. I hesitated. The kid had hurt me too with that "we don't miss you" comment, but 8 years of being his stepdad doesn't just evaporate overnight. Told him he could come the next day after school, gave him the address, but made him promise not to tell his mom. Bernice thought I was being naive, said it was probably a trap, Barbara using Gage to find out where I lived. Maybe she was right, but I had to know. Had to see if there was anything worth salvaging there. Gage showed up right on time, wearing the hoodie I'd gotten him last Christmas, stood awkwardly in the doorway of my new apartment, eyes taking in the half-unpacked boxes, makeshift furniture arrangement. Curtis went nuts when he saw him, tail wagging, jumping all over the poor kid. What came next was maybe the most honest conversation I've ever had with my stepson. We sat on the balcony, drinking sodas and watching traffic below, Gage staring at his shoes while he talked. Told me Barbara and Silvio had been seeing each other for almost a year, said he'd overheard them talking about me while I was in the hospital. Barbara saying how convenient my accident was, giving them more time together. The kicker, the "we don't miss you" line, wasn't even his idea. Barbara had coached him, promised him a new gaming system if he said it convincingly enough, said she needed to push me away so I'd stop calling so much. The kid was 16, caught between loyalty to his mom and his own moral compass. I asked why he was telling me all this now. He looked up then, finally meeting my eyes, said finding the house half empty had been a wake-up call, said he'd seen who his mom really was when she'd spent the entire night on the phone with her friends instead of looking for me, more worried about the missing furniture than whether I was okay. That night, after Gage left, I sat on my balcony until 2 in the morning, nursing a beer and trying to process everything. Kept thinking about all the signs I missed over the years, the late nights at work events, the weekends with friends I never met, the gradual distance that I'd attributed to normal relationship ebbs and flows. The next morning, my burner phone lit up with a text from an unknown number, a single line, "I know Gage visited you yesterday, Barbara." Somehow she'd gotten my new number, probably from Gage's phone while he was sleeping. I didn't respond. Instead, I called Reggie, updated him on the situation. He advised keeping all communication through him going forward, standard procedure in contentious divorces, said we were still on solid legal ground with the property division, reminded me to document any harassment or threats. 2 weeks after the move, the doorbell camera Bernice had installed at my apartment caught Barbara sitting in her car in the visitor's parking lot, just sitting there, staring at my building for 3 hours. The notification popped up on my phone while I was at physical therapy, sending my anxiety through the roof. My new place was supposed to be my safe space. Now it felt violated, somehow. When I got home, her car was gone, but a package sat outside my door. No shipping label, just my name scrawled in Barbara's handwriting. Inside, Curtis's old dog bed, some photos of Gage and me fishing, and a letter. I didn't read it right away, put it in a drawer, and tried to forget it existed. That night, Barbara called from yet another new number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me I should. Her voice sounded different, subdued, lacking the usual manipulation tactics. She asked about Curtis, asked if I was healing okay, then went quiet for so long I thought she'd hung up. Finally, she said she'd tell me everything if I wanted to know. No more lies, no more games, just the truth. Part of me wanted to hang up, to protect the progress I'd made, but a bigger part needed answers, closure, I guess. So, we talked for almost 2 hours. She admitted the affair with Silvio had started 9 months before my accident, said she'd been planning to ask for a divorce but could never find the right time. Then I got hurt, and suddenly there was a new calculus. If I died, she'd get the insurance money. If I lived, she'd have to split everything in a divorce. That's why she never visited. She was hoping I wouldn't make it. Let that sink in. My wife of 8 years was actively hoping I would die. When I survived, she started withdrawing money, preparing for the inevitable separation. The Cancun tickets, a planned getaway with Silvio once everything was settled. The jewelry store charge, a gift for him, not her. I listened to it all without interrupting, without reacting, just absorbing each revelation like another brick being added to the wall between my old life and my new one. When she finished, I had only one question. Why tell me this now? She laughed, but it sounded hollow, said Silvio had broken things off the day after I moved out. Apparently my psycho, her words had spooked him, made him realize she wasn't worth the drama. So, now she was alone in a half-empty house with a son who barely spoke to her. I should have felt satisfaction, vindication even. Instead, I just felt tired. Tired of the games, the lies, the emotional roller coaster of it all. I told her I'd have Reggie handle everything from here on out, that we had nothing left to say to each other. A week later, Gage asked if he could stay with me on weekends, said things at home were tense, Barbara drinking more than usual, crying at random times, picking fights over nothing. I checked with Reggie, legally complicated but doable with Barbara's consent. Surprisingly, she agreed, maybe out of guilt, maybe just to get a break from parenting. Either way, I cleared out the second bedroom and set it up for Gage. Nothing fancy, just a bed, a desk, and space for his stuff. The first weekend was awkward as hell. Neither of us knew quite how to be around each other in this new reality. Ended up spending most of it playing video games and ordering too much takeout. By the third weekend, we'd found our rhythm. Friday night movies, Saturday morning pancakes, Sunday dog walks with Curtis, small, ordinary moments building a different kind of relationship. Meanwhile, the divorce proceedings trudged forward. Barbara contested some of the property division initially, then suddenly dropped it, signed everything without further argument. The house would be sold, proceeds split evenly, the rest of our assets divided according to Reggie's original plan. 6 weeks after the move, I was scrolling through Instagram when an unfamiliar account popped up in my suggestions, Tessa from the hospital. We'd exchanged numbers, but hadn't really stayed in touch. Her profile was mostly hiking photos and food pics. Without overthinking it, I sent her a message, just a casual check-in. She responded almost immediately. We met for coffee a few days later. Nothing romantic, just two people catching up. She'd changed jobs, moved to a different hospital. I showed her photos of Curtis in his new apartment life, told her about Gage's weekend visits. She listened in that same attentive way she had in the hospital, like every word mattered. As we were leaving, she mentioned a support group for people recovering from major injuries and life changes, said it had helped her after her own divorce years ago. I took the info but didn't commit. Groups weren't really my thing. But 2 weeks later, I found myself sitting in a community center meeting room, surrounded by strangers with their own stories. Didn't say much that first time, just listened. It was oddly comforting to be around people who understood the physical and emotional toll of rebuilding a life from scratch. 3 months post-move, things were finally settling into a new normal. My leg was healing, still with a limp but no more crutches. The apartment actually looked like someone lived there, rather than a storage unit. Curtis had claimed the sunny spot by the sliding door as his personal domain. Then came the day of the final divorce hearing. I'd been dreading it for weeks, not because I had second thoughts, but because it meant being in the same room as Barbara again. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Barbara sat across the aisle, wearing a dress I'd never seen before, hair done, makeup perfect, like she was performing for an audience. When our eyes met, she gave me a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. The proceedings were surprisingly anticlimactic. The judge reviewed our agreement, asked a few clarifying questions, then made it official with a stroke of his pen. 8 years of marriage dissolved in less than 30 minutes. As we walked out, Barbara stopped me in the hallway. For a moment, I thought she might cause a scene. Instead, she handed me an envelope, said it was a copy of our wedding photo that I'd left behind, said she thought I might want it someday for memory's sake. I thanked her politely, tucked it in my jacket pocket, and walked away, didn't look back. The photo went straight into the trash when I got home. That night, I got a text from Gage, asking if our weekend plans were still on. Despite the divorce being final, something about that message, the uncertainty in it, the fear of more loss, hit me hard. Reminded me that while Barbara and I were done, my relationship with Gage didn't have to end too. I texted back, of course, pizza and movie night tomorrow, your pick this time. The next evening, as Gage and I sat on the couch with Curtis sprawled across both our laps, I found myself actually laughing at some stupid joke in the movie, not the polite chuckle you forced to be social. A real laugh that caught me by surprise with its authenticity. And that's when it hit me. I was going to be okay, not immediately, not perfectly, but eventually, genuinely okay. Last week, Barbara finally sold the house. Movers came for her remaining things. Bernice sent me a picture of the sold sign in the front yard. Should have felt monumental, but it was just another step in the process of untangling our lives. Yesterday, I had my final physical therapy session. The therapist said I'd made remarkable progress, that most people with my injury take twice as long to reach this point. I credited spite and stubbornness. She called it resilience. Maybe we're both right. So, that's where things stand. Reddit, divorce finalized, household moved, physical recovery on track, Gage visiting regularly, Curtis thriving, me finding my way forward one day at a time. Oh, and Tessa? We've had coffee 6 times now, dinner twice, nothing rushed, nothing forced. Just 2 people getting to know each other properly. She came over last weekend and taught Gage how to make homemade pasta. The kitchen looked like a flower bomb had exploded, but it was the best meal I'd had in months. Barbara still texts occasionally, usually about Gage, sometimes about practical matters, mail that needs forwarding, tax documents, insurance paperwork. Our conversations are civil but brief. The anger has faded to something more like distant acknowledgement. We were part of each other's stories for a while, now we're not. As for Silvio, he moved out of the neighborhood last month, apparently decided a fresh start somewhere else was easier than navigating the aftermath of being the other man in a messy divorce. Can't say I blame him. Someone asked me recently if I regret how I handled things, if Operation Empty House was too extreme. Maybe it was, but I don't regret standing up for myself, don't regret showing Barbara exactly what life without me looked like. In the end, she found an empty house. I found myself again.